Yeah, it's on. Um, what's going on, everybody? We are back, and we are in another season of the jungle. This season, guys, I'm kind of redoing things a little bit. Um, the point of this whole season is, all the last three have been people who've been through the prison system, dealt with felonies, dealt with drug addictions, and basically come out shining on the back end. This whole season, I want to talk to just normal people. I've got a lot of great people lined up. I've got a lot of amazing people that have amazing stories, have walked through some pretty dark valleys, and come out shining and still continue to put one foot in front of the other every day. So, first of all, I do want to thank all of you for tuning in. I want to thank Rachel for showing up here. I'm going to introduce her in just a second. I want to thank all my previous guests and everybody that keeps continuing to check out the show. The numbers are still doing very well. This whole thing was only just started to basically give a little bit of hope out there to people who are maybe going through some bad times in their lives. And so I wanted to bring a really great friend of mine on today. Her name is Rachel Shane. Rachel and I went to high school together, and we were just kind of laughing a minute ago because out of the last 20 years, I think this is maybe the second or third time we've actually gotten to sit, and we were good friends in high school. We graduated from a small school called Rootstown. It was, I think our graduating class was like 130 people,
if even think it was that many. I think it was like 100.
Yeah. So it was just a small school. Everybody was basically friends with everybody. We had like some of our smaller groups and things like that, but Rachel and I, we hung out quite a bit. We were good friends, and it's just one of those situations where you grow old and you grow apart from people, and you don't have the time to hang out with those that you were really close with in high school. But she's here today. So guys, Rachel, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
So a lot of you are probably wondering, what does Rachel bring to the table? And what Rachel brings to the table is she tried to murder me when we were in elementary school. And I told her that I was going to bring this up, and I'm going to get into this real quick so that we can get on to the juicy stuff. Even though this is the juiciest stuff that I've dealt with in my entire life, it traumatized me.
It's been 20. Oh God, it's been 30 years, and you still haven't let it go. So
at least. Rachel's mom was a playground aide. And we were having, it was indoor recess one day.
Mm-hmm.
We were having indoor recess one day, and I think we were in fourth grade, maybe fourth.
I think it was third or fourth, yeah.
And Rachel and her co-defendant Megan Burnett decided to come over and stamp me with a ink stamp, and then proceed to tell me that I needed to call my mom. I was about to die from ink poisoning. And
actually, I think you're remembering that incorrectly. I think you stamped yourself, and then I was like, "Oh my God, what did you just do?" And then you were like, "What?"
Told you to say.
And you, and then you freaked out, and you tried to go to the bathroom and wash it off, and then when you couldn't, you were like panicking that you were gonna die. Now, was that nice? No. Has it given us something to talk about for the last 30 years? Yes. So I don't regret it.
Yeah, it has. No regrets. No, and it was funny because your mom, Debbie, was she was the playground aide, and I was sobbing. Like, I was hysterical.
I think your mom had to come pick you up, didn't she?
Probably. Probably. My mom had to come pick me up all the time. It's like I was an emotional mess in elementary school, dude.
Yes, me too. When I wasn't trying to murder people.
Right. No, so your mom came over and tried to console me and tell me everything was going to be okay. And I remember her barking at you over it. And yeah. So
yeah.
Premeditated murder in the first at.
I'm still not apologizing 30 years later.
That's okay. It's a good story. I still laugh about it. So all right. So Rachel, you are a full-time stay-at-home mother, correct?
No, I started working as a massage therapist part-time.
Okay.
When I do have a nurse that comes in a couple days a week. So I do that a few days a week. And then the rest of the time I'm at home with Max.
Okay.
he has to have like a nurse or somebody who's qualified to stay with him. And there's not a lot of people out there that are. So it's mostly
Right.
me.
So let's get into this real quick. So you met Bo and Andy's dad, Andy, your baby daddy.
Yeah.
I'm not even calling him your baby daddy.
Yes.
Where did you guys meet?
Um, oh God. It was when I was working, I was a bartender at the firehouse for like 5 years. And it was when I was working there, maybe 2015. Um, and then we started dating around that time, 2015, 2016, something like that.
Okay. And then so how long were you guys? So you have two children. You have Bo and you have Max, right?
Yeah. So Bo's
How
7 and Max is 5.
okay. So how were so what were you where were you working? What were you doing when you had Bo? Were you still at the firehouse?
Yeah, I was just finishing up massage school and working at the firehouse. I worked at the firehouse till I was like 8 months pregnant, and then I quit there and had Bo. We didn't have Bo for very long before I found out I was pregnant with Max. Max was a surprise, and uh, they're almost Irish twins. They're 14 months apart. So,
Oh wow.
um, and then during my pregnancy with Max, I found out that he had some medical problems. Nothing compared to what he came out with, but on my 12-week ultrasound, it showed that his heart was on the wrong side of his chest. So we did like all the testing that we could do to see if there was anything else. I did an amnio. I didn't know at the time, but a lot of kids who have congenital heart defects have like a genetic condition. The amnio came back that nothing was wrong. He passed with flying colors. And then we just kept trucking along. We're like, okay, we'll just deal with it as it comes. The doctor said that he might have to have a heart surgery when after he was born, and that we might be in the hospital for like 2 weeks after he was born. And that was wildly inaccurate,
Yeah.
and no fault of their own. Like they didn't know what was going on. He ended up being born 7 weeks early, and um, I had to have like an emergency C-section. And we found out maybe a month after he was born that he has something called MCAP, Megalencephaly-capillary malformation syndrome, and it's really, really rare. And so that's why the amnio doesn't even test for that because it's there's only 400 documented cases in the world. So,
Oh wow.
um, and then uh, life was kind of a whirlwind from there. Um,
So let me ask you real quick. What when he so you guys just trucked along. Like obviously, I mean, I would think that the heart being on the wrong side of the body would obviously be a major red flag, but maybe it's not. I don't know. What what was that like? Were you, I mean, me as a parent, obviously, I have two kids, a step kid. I would be freaking out. Like I'm sure
yeah,
you were.
yeah. Um, it was very, very stressful. I think with anything, the waiting is the worst. Like if you have any kind of diagnosis, the waiting of to see what it really is or to see what's really going to happen is the worst. And I found that out at like 12 weeks. So I had a lot of weeks
Yeah.
before he was born to worry. But we had a really good cardiologist in the hospital, like a fetal or a pediatric cardiologist, and he did like fetal echocardiograms, and he was like confident that the heart being on the wrong side of the chest isn't like necessarily that bad of a thing. The way that his heart was hooked up, so like the arteries go to your heart, veins go away from it. Um, Blood is supposed to dump in certain chambers. His was hooked up incorrectly. That was what we were like worried about. Um, so that's what the surgery was going to be, was to correct where the blood was dumping in the chambers, to put it in very layman's terms. Um, so it turns out when he was born, it is hooked up incorrectly, but everything's going to the right places. So it doesn't look like a typical heart, but it still functions like one. So heart wasn't really ever a super big issue for him.
Okay.
But it was a lot of stress, a lot of unknowns. but nowhere near as bad as what actually happened. How he actually came out. Everything that I was worrying about was so trivial compared to how he was born. So um, after he was born, he was taken to the NICU at Akron Children's. It was actually very traumatic. They took him. He wasn't, you know how you see on the movies where like the babies are born and then they start crying and they're like, "Oh, you're so happy." He didn't like cry or anything.
And that's so I was actually reading, it was your 3-year post. You had there was a post about him here. Actually, let's do this just so whoever's watching can have kind of an idea of um it was and again, if any of this like bugs you or whatever, just tell me and
Oh
I'll
no,
pull it
you're
down.
fine.
So this was him when he was born, correctly?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
correct? And immediately in the post, you had talked about how you knew immediately something was wrong because just like you said, they whisked him away into the NICU unit. So what was going through your mind? I mean,
I thought he was dead. They took, it was a C-section, so they took him out and then they immediately took him into another room. And nobody would tell us anything uh, because basically they didn't know. At the time, I was very like upset about it, but they can't say like, "Oh no, he's going to be okay." Like, you know, you can't say that in those kind of
yeah.
situations. Um, so I got taken to recovery, and Andy and I were basically just like, "Oh my God, like what's happening?" Like we had no idea. Finally, a chaplain named John. Some these kind of like memories, like you have very specific uh, memories, like you can remember it like it just happened. But he came in and asked us how we were doing, and I was like, "Can you tell me what's going on?" And he was like, "Oh, nobody's told you." So he went back, and then that's when they brought him out, and that's when we took this picture. And we got to see him like this for 2 minutes maybe, and then they took him to the NICU. Andy went with him to the NICU, and I stayed in the hospital because I had just had a C-section. So I had to stay in the hospital another night.
How long was it until you were able to finally hold him for the first time?
Hold him? Oh, a long time.
Yeah.
See him, I got to go the next day. They let me leave the hospital to go see him, um, which was also very traumatic. I mean, looking at this picture, I guess you can't tell as much that something's wrong with him, but this he's 7 weeks early and he weighs 7 pounds. He has an overgrowth syndrome, so his head is really big. His features, they called them dysmorphic, which is not pleasant to hear as a mother. But like his like face was like smaller than like a regular face on his head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you could tell something was wrong, but it was like, we did all the testing. What do you mean something's wrong? Like, you told us nothing was wrong, you know? So it was very, uh, I was so like scared that, oh, how cute. Um, because I didn't know what was wrong.
Yeah.
And I was very, like, I didn't process it quickly, but Andy was like sending out pictures to his family and his friends. And he's like, oh, yeah, everybody said. And I'm like, why are you sending out these pictures? We don't even know what's wrong yet. And I think there's just a difference between the way that men and women process things. Like I needed a beat to like be like, oh my God, like what's happening? And he was like, oh, our baby's here, you know, like it's
Yeah.
just very um we process things differently.
So do you think he was fully aware of like the severity of things at the time, or do you think it was just a matter of well,
I don't think either of us were aware of the severity at the time. I knew something was wrong more than he did, I think. I think he was like, oh, he's here. You know, we can see him, we can touch him.
yeah.
Um, and versus where I was like, okay, he's here, what's wrong? I also have control. Like I want to be in control and be able to make sure
Oh,
everything's
imagine
going to be
that. As a
okay. And
female, I'm shocked. Yeah.
yeah, and I had zero control in this situation. So it was very difficult for me. Even following this, he was in the NICU for 7 months. And even during that 7 months, for like the first like 2 months, I would go to the hospital and you could get breakfast there if you were a pumping mom. And so I would get the same cereal every day because like I knew I had control of getting that cereal. And it was like dumb stuff like that that I like look back on now and I was like, okay, you were trying to be like, okay, I can't control any of this, but I can
Yeah.
control that I'm going to eat this every day. Like, so it's very, I don't know, interesting to look back on.
When was Max finally diagnosed, and when did you come to full terms with the severity of what your guy's life was going to look like moving forward?
He was diagnosed maybe a month after he was born. That in and of itself was very jarring because there's not a lot of research out on what Max's life is going to look like. And everything that you Google is awful. Um, it's an overgrowth syndrome, so like a certain part of your body can be bigger. So there are a lot of kids who have like a giant arm or like a big side of their face or like things like that. And there's such a big spectrum on, there are some people who are walking, talking, mildly delayed. And then there's some who are trached on a vent and, like Max. So, and some worse than Max. So it was really hard to, again, have everybody just keep saying we're going to have to wait and see. Um, I realized like the severity of how bad everything was going to be would probably be when Max actually got trached, or when we found out that he needed to be trached. He had tracheal and bronchial malacia, which is like his airway was really floppy when you breathe, like it like shuts, flops
Okay.
together. So he needs like support. And a palliative care doctor that we spoke with before he went in to get the scope to see if he needed the trach or not went through all of what could happen, and trach vent was a step below. He didn't make it. And she was like, that's absolutely going to flip your life upside down. Like, you're going to have nurses in your house. Somebody's going to have to be awake with him 24/7. And when they came back and said, this is what he's going to have, we were like, oh shit. Like, um, we are definitely not ready for this. But you don't really have a choice. So
Well, and now that you made that statement, as a parent, and as me being a parent, obviously, no, you don't. And I think now you had several doctors. What was the conversation with the doctors where they basically said he wasn't going to
oh
make it, or you need to? Uh,
yeah, so he had his first initial surgery at Akron Children's in, I don't know, June or July, and they said they were going to trach him, and we were like preparing ourselves, and he came back from surgery and he didn't have a trach in, and they came and told us that his trachea was calcified and that she couldn't cut through it, was what she said. And so we were like sitting on a couch in the uh, room when they brought him back, and she was like, it's calcified. Even if I did get through it, if he rips it out at any time, you're not going to be able to get it back in, and he's going to suffocate. You're not going to, he's get your affairs in order. He's not going to have a quality of life, which is a big, big thing that people say to me as a special needs mom. What's his quality of life? And which we can touch on that in a minute. But all of those kind of things. And we just kept saying, like, are you telling us that he's going to die? Because I could see him. He was in the room, like,
yeah.
breathing, like he was not dead, And she kept saying, yeah, he's going to die. He's going to die. And so she left the room. And Andy and I have had this discussion early on because, uh, life just
Well, you
made
have to
us.
prepare. Yeah.
Yeah. What we would do if he didn't have a quality of life, and what quality of life actually meant to us. Like if he can't walk or talk, or you look in his eyes and he doesn't, you can tell that he's not really there, he's just existing, kind of a thing. And we had that conversation about like what that looks like for us, and all of those kind of things. And right after she told us all that, I went over to the crib and like held his hand, and he looked at me and like smiled with his eyes, because he was intubated, and like kind of smiled with his eyes. And I'm like, there's no way you can't tell me that he's still there. Like, there's a difference to me between being having no conscious awareness and just existing in a body that doesn't work and being needing medical help. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we were like, absolutely not. We want a second opinion. So we got a second opinion from Cincinnati and ended up flying him there, and they did the surgery there. And we were able to get it done and everything and come back to Akron. That doctor is no longer with Akron Children's. I don't know the. When we came back, it was made clear to everyone that she was not to set foot in Max's room. She was not his doctor. She was not, all of that. Because when we went to Cincinnati, they said, I said, what about the calcification? What are we going to have to do? And they said, this is the most run of the mill tracheostomy we've ever done. So either she was incompetent and couldn't do it, or um,
She was
I
trying to
can't
get.
imagine someone would be so evil as to just not.
Yeah, but
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, like, motivation or her ability, if that was an issue. But she never saw Max again. So
good.
yeah,
So what's it like having had a child on a trach? I mean, that's a lot of work. That's
it is. Especially he was on a ventilator for a long time too. So um, just picking him up when he's a baby and can't breathe is a task in and of itself. Going anywhere, like, you have to take oxygen tanks and a ventilator, and we have had bags. We're down to one bag now. We had bags of medical supplies that we had to take with us everywhere, and it's very like, you're hyper aware all the time of everything that's going on. Like, every room that I walked into was, is there a plug to put the vent to plug the vent in? Like, if we were out, if I had to do CPR right now, where would I do it? If I had to do a trach change right now, how fast could I do it? Um, and that's everywhere all the time. Like, that never goes
yeah,
away in your mind. And I still now, he has seizures too, and so I still now think, okay, if he had a seizure right now, this is especially at, like, public places or, like, school events for Bo. I think if he had a seizure right now and I had to bag him or do CPR or whatever, where could I do that would be the less distressing to all the children in the room? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
you always got to think about, like, that's always something that's in the back of your mind. So stressful, very stressful. So even just like going to a family member's house isn't like oh, let's just everybody jump in the car. It's planning, and do we have the meds that we need? How far
Right.
away is it? If our car broke down and it took us an extra hour, do we have those meds? Like, it just a very everything has to be very pre-planned.
Well, and I know there was at one point I'd either run into you or maybe it was around one of the birthday parties, and Mary and I had talked about trying to get together with you guys.
Hmm.
Um, and you're right. In the talks of trying to get together with you guys, it was a lot of like there was just a lot that had to be thought of, taken,
Organized.
organized,
Yeah.
taken into
Hmm.
consideration. So now he's not currently on a trach, is he?
No, he got decannulated. That's what it's called when you take the trach out, in August
Okay.
of last year. This year we did have a incident where he had a seizure and he was non-responsive afterwards, and they ended up having to put the trach back in. So the trach hole, that's called a stoma, is kind of like an earring hole. So, like, if you have an earring in for a while, that skin, like, grows around it. So the second you take the earring out, it doesn't close up.
Yeah.
So his stoma, they leave it open and they hope that it closes on its own so that they don't have to surgically do it. So his stoma is currently still open. It's closing, but it's still open. So at the time in January, they intubated him, which means they put the tube in there through his stoma when he wasn't breathing, and then switched it out to a trach because that's just it's more comfortable for him, and it's more logical in that he can move around more without the possibility of extubating himself. So, but it is back out now. So we go at the end of April to see if he has to have the surgery or decide what we're doing with that.
Okay. So he's is he walking now?
He can walk with a gait trainer, which is basically like a little walker for kids. He was on a very good path to be walking. We're getting close, but he got really sick in December, and then January, February, March have been a shit show, more or less, just because he's been so sick. And he was very, very sick for a couple weeks in January and surrounding that seizure and all that stuff that I talked about.
Yeah.
And he lost a lot of weight, and he lost like 6 pounds, which is a lot for a kid who weighs 40 pounds, and a lot of muscle, lost a lot of muscle mass, and just kind of set him back with like where he was. So when he came home from the hospital, like he wasn't sitting up on his own or anything. So we had to kind of like build that back up, which is really frustrating when you have been building that up for so long and
Yeah.
it seems like all of your progress is gone. But he regained it back quickly, and now we're having him walk every day again. So he's getting close, but he's not there yet.
Okay. I thought I saw when I was browsing your Facebook earlier, I swore I saw a picture of him at least standing by himself, and I
Yeah,
didn't see anything about him walking yet, so I wasn't sure. I just wanted to ask.
yeah,
So so in going through all that, what I mean, obviously you're a mother. I'm a
yeah.
father, you're a mother, Andy's a father. Like there's what what motivated you to just continue to push forward to fight for Max? I mean, obviously, I know the answer, you know, and it's a simple answer when you're a parent. It's because that's my kid. You know, that's
Right,
my blood. That's I'm not giving up on him.
right.
But what's it been like having to just push and probably push harder than most parents out there?
Um, it is a constant struggle. Some days are better than others. I think that there have been a few people along the way who have really helped me to be like, okay, you got to do this. Like, and people can help you, but nobody can do it for you, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
Um, so I've had a few people along the way who have given me like some pointers, and I'm like, okay, I can do this. Right before Max left the hospital, he had an incident where he had to have CPR early on, and before he left the hospital, he had to have a defibrillator. And so the paramedic who showed me, he was a former paramedic, and he sold the defibrillator to us, or it was somebody bought it for us. It was donated to us, but he had to come show me how to use it. And so I was asking him because I had seen Max have CPR, and the way that they taught me CPR in the hospital was like not the same way that the people in the hospital did it. And I was like, I want to know that way. I want to know the way that the nurses did it. I don't want to know the bullshit you're having a kid press on their chest like this way. You know what I mean? Like I wanted
yeah,
the nurse way. So I was asking him like some questions about that, and I was like, oh, and I was very nervous. It was like a couple weeks before Max came home, and I was like very like I was doubting myself. I'm like, I can't do this. Max has had CPR over a dozen times. Like it wasn't an issue of if, it was an issue of it was an issue of when. Like we had to literally be ready for that. And so I was like not thinking that I was going to be able to do it. And so I was like, oh, I'm just going to have to um, do that enough until the paramedics get there, and then they'll take over and like everything. And he was like, I hate to say this to you, but like most paramedics don't have pediatric experience, and they're not going to know what to do. They're not going to be experienced with trachs. They're not going to be experienced with children who have all of these conditions and their heart on the wrong side of their body and all of this kind of stuff. You're going to have to take the lead, and they'll help you, and they will be there to help you, but nobody's coming to save you. Like it's you. So you need to know how to do this well enough that if something detrimental does happen, you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I did all that I can do. And so I think about that all the time, that like if I'm the most prepared that I am, I look up CPR all the time, like once a month, to make sure that I'm like still on track with all that, and then I just think, okay, like I'm going to do everything in my power to keep Max safe, and then be able to look at myself and say, like, I know that I did everything that I could do. And that was one of the people that like gave me the confidence to be like, okay, I really can do this. I can, you know, make it through this. But yeah, it's really, really stressful, and it's more stressful than I think most people can comprehend. Um, because yes, you have kids, and your kids' life is, you're there to keep them alive and all those kind of things, but like you don't have to do it on a daily basis. And that's like the
Yeah.
difference, I think. So, um, yeah,
Well,
I
no,
don't
and
know.
that's part of the reason I wanted to have you on. I mean, the amount of I guess I'm trying to find the right word. Your level of parenting is unparalleled to anybody else's level of parenting that I know, uh from your day in and day from your daily life to basically the birthday parties and the Halloween
Mhm.
parties and things like that. Like, you go above and beyond and everything. And even just sitting here talking to you, like you said, nobody's coming to save you or Max. So it's got to be up to you. And there's also a huge level, there's got to be a huge confidence in all that, knowing that yes, paramedics may be coming, or yes, if there's an incident, you're well prepared to handle it.
Yeah.
Um, so, oh, I thought you were,
No, yeah, there is also about like the birthday parties and all that kind of stuff. I love doing that kind of stuff. Um and I also recognize that, okay, so there's a thing that special needs parents, people who have kids who have special needs and have siblings, it's called the glass child. So Bo gets looked through a lot.
yes,
Oh, there he is. There's
yeah,
Bobo. Um, there get looked through a lot because I have to keep Max alive. So there would be a lot of times where um, he's got to keep himself occupied while I'm bagging Max to keep him alive, kind of a thing. So I do recognize that some of the things that I'm doing with like the birthday parties and really going over the top is that I am, I don't even want to say it like this because it sounds bad, but like overcompensating, because I'm like, you've had to go through so much shit. I hope you love this kick-ass birthday party. You know what I mean? Like, trying to make up for the fact that Bo does have to miss a lot of stuff because we can't get Max sick. Like we don't just pick up and go out to eat very often and things like that, just because it's a pain in the ass, and
yeah.
Max doesn't want to sit in a stroller or a wheelchair, and he's throwing himself on the ground. Like, we're getting to the point where it's like um more difficult again. So I do feel like people look at that and they're like, oh my God, that's like over the, yeah, that's the point. I'm trying to be over the top because I want him to have like some really good memories
Yeah.
that hopefully balance out the really shit memories of him seeing Max have a seizure and paramedics come in. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
No, I get that. That was going to be another conversation or a topic that I brought up was Bo, because I mean,
Yeah.
obviously and he's what, 7 now?
Yeah.
So as a 7-year-old, he can, at least he's starting to be able to communicate how he feels and
Yeah.
what's going on with his little brother. And so
Hmm.
what's that like listening to Bo, and how's Bo feel about all this? Or is it just another day for Bo at this point? Because obviously that's when you're that age and that's how you've grown up for the last 7 years. That's all you
Right.
know.
Right.
Has he
Um,
adapted well, or is he?
yeah, I think so. I just watched a video yesterday that was in my Facebook memories, and it was him like sitting behind a chair, like just housing chocolate. And it was because Max had had an incident, and I was in the room. He was like maybe two, Bo was. I was bagging Max, and so I couldn't like watch him. So when Bo was like two, he realized that if I was doing something with Max that I had to do, he could go get in the most amount of trouble because there was nobody that was going to stop him.
Yeah.
So it was, he kind of went from that, and then he evolved into being like more interested in what was going on. And recently, it's been more trying to like curb anxiety. So when Max was in the hospital the last couple of times in January, it was a little bit more serious than other hospital stays that he's had. Um, Bo had stomach aches every day and was really upset and asked about Max all the time and is he okay and those kind of things. So it has been having to have repeated conversations with him that Max's health and safety is not his responsibility. It's mommy and daddy's, and we'll take care of it, blah, blah, blah. It's also a thing where I can never say he's definitely going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to lie to him. Like Max was going into the hospital unresponsive, and I didn't say like, "Don't worry, buddy, everything's going to be fine," because I don't know that a lot. Um, but it is something where we are having to have multiple conversations with him about that's not your worry, that's a mommy worry, not a Bo worry. And um, he's been doing better with that. So, but yeah, it's stressful for him too. He is
Well, yeah.
Max's biggest fan, and it's kind of annoying because anytime I tell Max no, Bo's like, "Let him do it. He's fine. Leave him alone." And I'm like, "Okay, well, he can't play with an electrical cord." And he's like, "It's fine. Leave him." Like he's wants Max to be able to do anything. But yeah, it's stressful for him too. Um,
For sure.
yeah,
No, that I can only imagine. Yeah. I what you just everything, and you've carried it so well. I just have to say it. And I know I don't see the tears on the backside. I don't see the
yeah,
fear and the anxiety, and obviously all that's there.
yeah.
But just the overall life that I've watched just through Facebook alone that you give
Hmm.
these boys, um, that was one of the main reasons when I was talking to Mary and looking for people to come onto the to do an episode with. I was like, dude, I have to have Rachel on, because you literally just you do what every parent would do. I mean, you put one foot in front of the other and you just trudge
Yeah,
through it, but you've done it with such a positive attitude, at least outwardly showing you've done it with such a positive attitude that's kind of just those are the types of people I want to talk to. And like I
yeah,
said, I know that I don't have any idea, I'm sure, of the tears and the fears and everything that you have on a daily basis, but I do want you to know that I admire you, I love you, I respect you because
oh, thank you.
you keep a smile on your face through all of it. Even when I'm sure you want to cry, I mean, for Bo, you're wearing a smile because
Yeah,
um, and I think a lot of other people, a lot of our friends that we went to high school with, I mean, you've come up in conversations that I've had with other people. It's just your positive attitude. You've always been a very positive person. You've always that dumb laugh that you have all through high school.
so sweet, so sweet.
I figured I needed to get a laugh out of you.
Yeah,
No, but like I just everybody remembers your laugh. Everybody remembers Rachel being fun to hang out with, and you've definitely you are a I want to say very positive influence for people to look up to. You're when things kind of get rough, I
yeah.
you've you've done
Yeah, we
well.
try. I mean, like you said, like there are times where you do have anxieties and things like that, and you have to kind of grieve like the life that you thought you were going to have, and that's okay. Like it's okay to be upset that like you don't get to go on as many vacations, or you know what I mean. Like, but overall, like Andy is a very very laid back person, so um, literally they can tell us anything, and we're like, okay, and just come up with a
Roll with the
plan and roll with
punches.
the punches. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that that's really all you can do sometimes. Um,
Well,
but
it's great
yeah,
because I think you've been that person your entire life, though. Too. I don't
yeah,
ever remember you being somebody that was like high strung in high school or like throughout the whole
yeah,
time I've known you that you get emotional and you get bent out of shape over. You've always been kind of a roll with the punches. So the fact that you found somebody that's very similar in
equally.
that aspect,
Yeah.
yeah, that's going to be a huge plus. Let's talk. You brought up quality of life, so
Hmm.
that you get asked about quality of life all the time. Is
Yeah.
that you kind of look like? I mean, I'm
Annoyed.
sure you get tired of hearing it and
Yeah.
annoyed. I'm only circling back to it because you brought it up and you said we could talk about it. So,
Yeah.
is that something like d- being a special needs mom? Is that kind of one of those just don't ask? Like, obviously, it's hard.
Um,
Like,
I think that quality of life is, I think that with anything, there are some like buzzwords that people hear and then they like cling on to and
yeah,
then say dumb shit. You know what I mean? Um, and that's one of them that people are like, well, what's his quality of life? And it's like, I don't know. He looks pretty damn happy to me.
Well,
He's not. If he was struggling in physical pain constantly, or if he was, I mean, I think there's a difference between having more challenges than the average person and you're suffering for somebody else's uh, gain or purpose. You know what I mean? Like if you were just to keep, if he was completely brain dead, for lack of a better word, couldn't breathe on his own, couldn't eat, couldn't blink, that's an issue of you don't have any quality of life. And if you're keeping somebody alive like that, I believe, that's more for you than for them. But that's not my place to say. It's not my kid. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
so I feel like same thing for Max. People have asked, like, oh, well, what kind of quality of life does he have? Do you remember that girl on Facebook who said, I should have had testing done and had an abortion? Do you remember that?
I do vaguely remember it
I'm
because
blowing my nose.
it
Okay,
blew
sorry.
it kind of blew up in her face.
Yeah. She said something about that I should have had an abortion. And that was really the first time somebody had kind of like bullied us because of it, I guess. Maybe bully is a strong word, but like had been like shitty to us. And a lot of people always ask me too. Another thing I get asked a lot is like, oh, are kids like really mean to Max? No, no kid has ever been mean to Max. Adults have.
Yeah,
At Max's preschool, he is the most
probably
popular
the
kid in
coolest thing.
class.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably,
the kids are enamored with his wheelchair and all those kind of
yeah,
things. And even when we're out, a kid might come up and be like, oh my God, that kid has a really big head. And you know what? They're not wrong. There's a difference between observing things and then being shitty about them. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Nobody's like, oh my God, he's so ugly because he has a big head. No little kid says that.
yeah.
Do adults whisper shit that I can hear? Yes. So it's insane that people so focused on the kids. Oh my God, are kids so mean to them? No, they're not. They're not.
It's
um,
it's
they're
funny you brought that.
curious.
Yeah, it's funny you brought that up. Flynn, he's our 10-year-old.
Uh-huh.
Um, his best friend uh is a special needs kid, and it's his best friend,
Mm-hmm.
and he is, like you said, he is the superstar in his class. Rides around in a
Yeah.
wheelchair, sunglasses on. Flynn goes over to their house, goes swimming, like, and it's another. It's I've had conversations with his parents, and
Mm-hmm.
they've said the same thing. Like, don't ask us about quality of life. Obviously, our kid is loved.
Right.
Obviously, we take great care of him, and that's all you can do for any kid. So what? He
Right.
rides around in a wheelchair. So what? He has a disorder. So what? He's probably
Right.
loved more than you guys love your kid. Like,
Right.
so no, it's
Well, Max has a little buddy. I held Max back for another year of preschool, not based on when it comes to like special needs kids, they obviously don't have to meet the regular standards to move on. So he could have went to kindergarten last year. I held him back stamina wise because he was only going a couple days a week and he doesn't have the stamina to be out and interacted with um, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day in a kindergarten yet. So I kept him back. But the year before, he had a little friend at preschool named Brigham, and I'm good friends with Brigham's mom now. I talk to her. Um, but Brigham was obsessed with Max. Just every school picture, he's like with Max. Every post that the teacher would put on the like little app or whatever, he's like handing Max a toy. Like just loves him. And to see that is the most comforting thing to me. That there are kids that will look out for him. I just saw a video a couple days ago of a woman who was an aide on a bus with a kid who was autistic. I don't know if he was verbal or not, but there was a camera and she was like elbowing him
oh, I
and like
saw it.
hitting
Yeah, it was
him. Yeah,
disgusting. Yeah,
that is my worst fear. And that's not from a kid. I'm not worried that
yeah,
like a kid's going to beat Max up. I'm worried that an adult is going to get frustrated with him because he is frustrating. He pinches, he bites. And it's out of frustration because he can't talk and he's limited to how many signs he can do. And so he's trying to communicate, and he gets pissed, and he's like, I'm pissed, and then he pinches and bites you and stuff. And I understand that's frustrating, but the idea that like an adult can turn around and do that to a child is just,
No,
that's what
it's
I'm scared
horrifying.
of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's horrifying.
Yeah.
I would go back to prison.
Yeah.
If I was that kid,
Exactly. I
I
said
would go
there's
back
just
to
no
prison.
amount of uh, money that would keep me off of her front steps. I don't
Yeah,
know, but that's those are the things that I'm scared of.
yeah, and with
And Max can't talk, so
you're
he
right.
can't tell
Yeah,
me what's going on at school. Um, right now, his nurse goes with him, and I fully trust the staff where he's at now. But his nurse goes with him, so I don't have any issues. You know, Amber has been with us since Max came home from the hospital, and she's like family. That picture that you showed earlier was Max being the ring bearer in her wedding. So
oh, okay.
you know, like uh, I
I
fully
didn't pull
trust
the
her.
picture up. That was cute though too. I saw the back of the wheelchair where it said just. Did you guys have
Yeah,
candles? With it?
yeah,
Yeah, that was cute.
yeah. It
Um,
was it was a super that was a super good day.
Go. No, I mean, like I said earlier, is there, first of all, is there anything else that you want to talk about? As far as maybe things that have irritated you with people, I mean, you talked about people that make comments in public. Obviously it's disgusting. It's disgusting behavior.
Yeah.
Um, but is there anything that you want to touch on as far as like Max goes or Bo goes or even
Um.
yourself? Like maybe advice for somebody that's going through dealing with a special needs kid or
Yeah. So okay. Anybody who has a special needs kid who's having problems with getting access to things that you should have access to. So healthcare, anything, any kind of like assistance that you should qualify for, um, any insurance things, they're always going to say no. Every single time, no matter if you qualify for it or not, they're going to say no the first time. And it's a very frustrating thing, but you have to just keep persevering. You have to continuously, like we just got a waiver for Max to help with his. It's so that he has Medicaid as a backup now, and it's necessary. It's so necessary, but it took me 9 months, I think, to get him to qualify for it. And it's all these hoops that they want you to jump through. The system is basically designed for you to fail. There's not enough funds for everybody, and so they make you jump through so many hoops that enough people quit that they have
the
enough money
funding
for
for
everyone. Does that
people that
make
step up.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, it's insurance in
Um,
general, unfortunately.
right, which is awful, but I mean, one of Max's medications, Max is on multiple medications. I don't even know how many off the top of my head, but one of them that he recently got on a couple years ago was it's $40,000 a month retail
What?
price. Yes. Okay, $39,900 retail. And it is uh, like I don't know what that would be if we didn't have insurance, the Medicaid as a backup, you know, thousands of dollars worth of prescriptions and medical supplies and everything every month. And I genuinely don't know how people do it. If you don't get one of these waivers that like helps you pay for these things. So my general advice would be number one, you just cannot give up. Number two, you need to make friends with another person who has a kid with special needs. It can be me, if anybody out there, um, because they're the person. Social workers are helpful, doctors are helpful, but they don't live it. So they can keep pushing you off into a different direction and saying, oh, yeah, try this, try this, try this. The special needs mom will be like, I tried all that. This is the thing that works. And they can point you in the actual right direction. And also listen to you complain without telling you that you need to be more positive or more, oh, don't worry about that. You know, somebody that's going to be like, fuck, that sucks. I'm sorry. And not try to make you feel better, um, which sometimes you don't need, you know. Um, but yeah, so sticking with it, um, finding a special needs parent to help you along, and giving yourself grace. Like, you're going to fuck this up at some point. You're going to do something that's wrong. There is no handbook to any kid, let alone a kid that's medically complex. And a lot of doctors look at you and say, well, what do you want to do? Like, I went to medical school.
Right.
Um, And so you're going to mess up. Just give yourself grace. This is your first time around. Like, you got to not be so hard on yourself, because it is really hard to make a decision and then in hindsight be like, that was the wrong decision, but not beat yourself up about it.
No, I think
So
that's really good advice. And anybody that sees this that might want to reach out to Rachel, you can hit me up on Facebook or wherever
yeah,
if you don't have Rachel's contact info. But if that's no, I've there's been several times where I've sat back and just looked at my kids and thought, would I be able to do and handle it the way that Rachel's handled it? And I can't answer that. I don't know.
right.
I'm sure I would push through it just fine.
Well, I
But
think that, I always say, like, I didn't have a choice. And my mom says, yeah, you do. The kids, Max was in the NICU and the PICU for 7 months. And there was a kid next to Max that was, when we were in the NICU, I don't know, probably for 3 months, that nobody ever came to see. Nobody was ever there. So you do have a choice. You could turn around and walk away. You're a piece of shit. But like,
yeah,
you do have a choice to not take care of the kid. So I think in most people's situation, you say, I could never, until you're there. And then you are like, this is my kid. Like, obviously, I'm going to do everything that I need to do. And it gets easier as time goes on. Is it ever awesome? No, but you get you get used to it, I guess. Most of it. But yeah, people always say, like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. And I think most people could.
yeah.
Um, it would come along with a lot more heartache than you might think, but um, I think most people could.
No, that's what you've done and the way you've carried yourself has been amazing. And I've always loved you.
Thanks.
I've always thought of you as a great friend, even though we don't really get to talk anymore.
Yeah,
Um, but I always make sure that you guys are favorited on my Facebook because I always
so you
love
can
seeing
see.
the post Max and things like that. And
Yeah,
I've
that
yeah,
that was also a really I've said this before on my social media. Um, Being in the NICU and PICU and stuff, you're very isolated away from everyone. Like, you don't have that. Like, and although the stress that comes along with it, like, you can't just like go out for coffee and stuff. Really, you're
yeah,
in the thick of it. And so, like, I probably overshared sometimes on Facebook, about what was going on and all of that kind of stuff. And looking back at it now, it's because I wanted, like, that connection, like that, like, um, I don't know, to feel like I had, like, some
have
kind of a
people that
life, to feel like I
yeah,
had, like, I could communicate with people that weren't doctors, nurses, or
yeah,
Andy and Bo, like, you know what I mean? Like, um, and I don't regret that. So I always say with people with like social media that sometimes people are posting like a million times a day or something, like, let that go. Like, you don't know what that person's going through. Maybe that is like their way of like coping
yeah.
right now, which might sound dumb, but like their way of like coping right now, that, like, you know,
Well,
um
I
is
agree. There's a
helping.
lot of yeah. I post a lot to social media. I also I've got different projects that I have going on, and my thing's always been, I did a pretty solid job of screwing my life up for a while, and I want
Hmm.
people to understand like you can still make a great life for yourself.
Right.
But I'm in the same boat. I post and I go back and I look through my posts sometimes. I'm like, dude, like you're doing too much. Slow down,
Hmm.
relax. But
Right.
you're absolutely right. Like people and I think that goes in the same boat for me. I want people to see. I want to be able to reach out and connect with people. I don't get to see all the people that I used to, and there's a whole
Right.
world of people that you can come conversate with and have discussions with out there. Are some of them pieces of shit? Yeah, and unfortunately you get those in the mix too. But
Right.
I totally understand where you're coming from, and I agree with you. If you see somebody posting a lot, that could be their only avenue to reach out and connect
Their
with people.
outlet. Yeah.
So let them do it. Like if you don't want to
Right.
see it, like unfriend them or unfollow them. Like
Right,
it's that simple.
exactly. Yeah,
But no,
exactly.
I
And I
100%.
also think it's been a really good avenue to like connect with other moms and things. People have been like, "Oh, can you, my friend had a baby that has special needs. Could you reach out to him on Facebook?" And then I'll see them posting and being like, "Oh my God, I don't know what to do, blah, blah, blah. I don't have this." And then I'm just like, "Oh, hey, I have that. Let's hook up."
Yeah.
And so I think that it's really good in that regards too. Oh, but I'm already starting for next year. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I've already started brainstorming, or this later this year.
For a
But
costume.
yeah, for Halloween.
I love
Um,
it.
but uh, but yeah, so I don't know. I just think overall, I try not to judge like Facebook or like people out and about. Like there are a lot of pictures that I see of Bo or Max where their hair is due for a haircut 4 months ago and they're in clothes that probably don't fit or have a stain on them or something. And I think, people when I was out were probably like, what is this woman doing? Like, get your shit together. And at the time, I didn't have the capacity to handle that stuff. And so I read a quote the other day that was something about like, I regret the way that things happened, but at the time, that was the best I could do.
Yeah.
And I feel like that like made me feel a lot better because there are a lot of things that I look back on my kids and I'm like, oh my God, that was such a train wreck. But like, that was the best I could do at the time. So
If you
again,
are
that goes back to giving yourself grace.
yeah, and I have to say, if you are a mother or a father that has dealt with toddlers or dealt with small
Mhm.
children, and you are out in public and you are going to judge another parent because there is a haircut that is overdue or a stain on a shirt, you could take your opinion and stick it in your because
Mhm.
because I can't tell you how many times, and you're probably the same way.
Yeah.
Put those kids in their car seat, they get their sippy cup, and 2 minutes later, there's a stain on
Yeah.
the shirt. Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
part of parenting, and yeah. So if you're gonna be out in public and judge people like that, go pound salt. Uh,
Yes.
and then
I
not to
agree.
mention, like you have a whole other like just plate on top of it. So yeah, I think you deserve all the grace in the world. So we are pushing up on an hour. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Um, I don't think so. I mean,
See,
I
this
don't
was
know.
way easier than you thought. And
Yeah, to talk for an hour, I could talk for an hour. Talk for
I
an
know
hour
you can
every day.
talk for that. Yeah. No, again, I do want to thank you for coming on. I know I could sit here and see in your face when you're going back through all that, like the hurt, the pain,
Yeah.
and like I said before, Rachel, you've carried yourself so well, and you have, you're an inspiration, at least to me. I mean, as
Thanks.
far as being able to push through life, and you can get handed some shit to walk through, and you
Yeah.
just scrape it off your shoe and keep going. And I feel like you are a role model in that aspect. This was I know Rachel was invited to my first wedding. We did
Yeah.
get rid of that chick, but Rachel was there. Uh,
But these
so
people are all still good, so
yeah, no, I still keep in contact with all of them actually.
yeah.
Not as It's like you, not as much as I would like,
Yeah.
but everybody grows up and grows old. So well,
I just
Rach,
posted this picture recently, and said, I'm still doing my hair like this. Am I like one of the 80s moms that was like curling her bangs up and like nobody's telling her in 2010 that like that's not cool anymore?
well, I
But
almost, as payback for the ink poisoning, I almost got your Olin Mills photo off of your Facebook page, the before and after that you
but
had from like I think it was your Halloween costume a year or two ago. But I was like, no, I'm not going to do that to her. So. All right. Well, listen, we can wrap this up, guys. Be
okay.
sure to check out the YouTube page. You can check us out on Apple, Spotify, Amazon. I think we're on Castbox and Podbean too. I appreciate everybody coming to check us out today. Rachel, again, thank you for coming on. You're
No
amazing. I love
problem. It's good
watching
to
all your
see
stuff
you.
on you too. And we do have to link up and get together. I don't.
Yeah,
There's no reason for us not to. I don't. We're. Oh,
this
here.
summer.
I'm gonna wrap this show real quick. Just stay here real quick though.
Okay.